Mom said, "Your husband is rich, he'll replace us." She didn't know I'd lose everything and rebuild from the ashes. They say betrayal feels worst when it comes from blood, but no one prepares you for the silence that follows. The kind of silence that roars inside your soul after your mother slams the door in your face and says, "You have him now. You don't need us." My name is Elira, and once upon a time, I was just a girl with a suitcase full of dreams and a heart. Naively in love. I believed love could fix everything. That money didn't matter. That family never stops being family. All of that was before I learned the price of trusting the wrong people. Before my husband turned cold. Before my mother turned colder. Before I lost everything and decided no more. But let me take you back to the beginning, when I thought my life was just beginning. When I believed in forever. I was 22 when I met Julian. Royce, wealthy, handsome, charming in that effortless way rich men tend to be when the world has never told them no. I was working the night shift at a coffee bar downtown, trying to make rent and get through nursing school. He walked in wearing a suit that looked more expensive than my entire apartment. Ordered black coffee, stayed for 3 hours reading contracts and watching me every time I cleaned a table. Then left me a $500 tip and a business card that read, "Dinner, JAR." I laughed. Then I called. Foolish, maybe. But I was young and broke, and when he looked at me, I felt seen. He made me feel like Cinderella, minus the magic mice. He'd send drivers to pick me up, take me to dinners at rooftop restaurants, gift me books I once mentioned in passing. In a few months I was in love. Blindingly, breathlessly in love. Julian proposed on the balcony of a lake house. He didn't even own it, was his weekend property. My hands were shaking as I said yes. But when I brought him home to meet my mother, her lips thinned like she was forcing herself not to spit. Men like that don't marry girls like you, Elira. They use them. I should've listened. But I was in love. I begged her to give him a chance. She refused to attend the wedding. Didn't even call. Julian said, "Let her sulk. You have me now." And I did. For a while, I had everything. The first few months were a dream. I moved into his estate, yes, estate with marble floors, spiral staircases, a view of the mountains and closets bigger than my old apartment. I quit my job, dropped out of school. He said I didn't need to work, that's what trust funds are for. I was hesitant, but he was persuasive and loving. At least in the beginning. Then slowly, the man I married began to disappear. It was subtle at first. Cancelled dinners, forgotten anniversaries, trips he said were business only. He started calling me sweetheart the same way you'd call a pet distant, careless. One day, I found a diamond bracelet in the glove box of his car. It wasn't mine. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. "Oh, come on, Elira. You knew what this was. I gave you a life. Let me live mine." I remember the cold in my chest. The way his words sounded like ice breaking. That night, I called my mother for the first time in almost 2 years. She answered on the second ring. "Hello," she said, like she didn't recognize the number. "It's me, Mom. Can I come home?" There was a pause. Then her voice, sharp and unapologetic. "Julian has money. You chose him. You don't need us now," I begged. She hung up. I sat on the marble bathroom floor for hours, sobbing into a towel that probably cost more than my childhood bicycle. That night, I realized I was utterly alone. No husband, no mother, no friends. Because I had pushed them all away to live a fantasy that was now crumbling around me. Julian served me divorce papers 3 months later. No warning. Just a knock on the door from a lawyer and a thin envelope. That carried the end of my life as I knew it. The prenup I signed, yes, stupidly left me with nothing. Not even the car. I had to pack my bags and leave the mansion in a cab. Do you know what it feels like to walk away from a world you thought was your future, wearing sunglasses to hide your swollen eyes, while security guards close the gate behind you like you're a stranger? It's humiliating. It's devastating. It's awakening. I found a cheap studio apartment and used the last of my savings to get a mattress and a microwave. I started waiting tables again. I applied for scholarships. I tried to enroll back in school, but they told me I'd have to start from scratch. One night, in a haze of heartbreak and frustration, I Googled how to start a business with 100. The rabbit hole that search took me down changed my life, but I'll tell you more about that in time, because the most painful betrayal hadn't happened yet. It wasn't Julian's infidelity. It wasn't my mother's rejection. It was what I discovered next, something that turned every ounce of grief inside me into fire. My mother had been in contact with Julian the entire time. I couldn't sleep after finding out. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the screenshots, rereading the messages that shattered what was left of my heart. Julian had sent me the files himself, petty, cruel, and gleeful. Maybe he thought it would break me further. Maybe he wanted to make sure no one stood by me when he was done. Either way, he succeeded. The messages were all there. From 2 years ago to just a few months ago. My mother texting Julian like they were some kind of transactional best friends. Thank you again for the groceries, Julian. Things have been tight lately. Elira's lucky to have someone who can give her real stability. She's stubborn. She'll come around eventually. If she ever becomes difficult, remind her how lucky she is. She needs that. Every sentence was another knife. The woman who raised me, who cried when I graduated high school, who taught me how to braid my hair and pack a lunch with love, had sold me out for feathers, for groceries, for stability. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was disgusted at both of them, but mostly at myself for believing I ever had anyone in my corner. I wanted to confront her. I typed a message, deleted it, called her, hung up before it rang. What would I even say? Why did you treat me like a business deal? Why did you choose my cheating husband over your own daughter? She wouldn't answer. Or worse, she'd justify it. I stopped reaching out, blocked her number. I didn't even cry this time. Something inside me had shifted. The fire had started to burn. I focused everything I had on building something, anything that could save me from drowning in pain. It started with an idea. A simple one. When I was at my lowest, I noticed how badly stress affected my body, my hair, my skin, my energy. I started making my own holistic teas from herbs and supplements I researched obsessively at night. I made a blend called Resurrect. The name was a joke at first, but it worked. And I thought, maybe it could help others too. I designed a cheap label on Canva, ordered $50 worth of herbs online, bought empty tea sachets, and heat sealed them in my tiny kitchen. Then I launched a tiny online store. No fancy site, just a payment link, a story, and a picture of me holding the tea, captioned, "I lost everything. This is how I'm getting it back." I sold 11 orders that first week. 7 of them were from strangers. I cried when I packed each envelope by hand. The months that followed were brutal. I worked at a cafe by day, made teas at night, slept for hours, took business classes online, learned how to build a brand from scratch, watched YouTube videos on SEO, e-commerce, inventory, branding, funding. I didn't go on dates. I didn't talk to friends. I didn't party. I just built. By year 2, I had a real company. Rise Plus Remedy, a holistic wellness brand for women rebuilding their lives. I had 14,000 Instagram followers, 5 employees, and a deal with a boutique spa chain interstates. And no one, not Julian, not my mother, not anyone from my old life knew. I wanted to keep it that way until fate decided otherwise. It happened one Saturday. I was at a small business expo, standing at my booth with samples of my bestsellers. A middle-aged woman with salt and pepper hair stopped in front of me. She looked familiar. It took me a full 3 seconds to realize it was my mother. She didn't recognize me at first. My hair was longer now, my makeup sharp, my posture straight. I wore a black pantsuit with heels and a pin that read Founder, Rise Plus Remedy. She glanced at the logo. "You work here?" she asked, voice flat. I stared at her, lips barely moving. "No, I built this." Her face paled. "I thought you were ruined," I offered. "Alone? Starving in a studio apartment?" She said nothing. Then she reached out. Her hand touched my elbow. "Elira, I didn't mean for things to go that way." I cut her off. "You meant to say Julian could replace you." "He did. And when he left, you made sure I had nothing." "Congratulations, you got what you wanted." Tears welled in her eyes. "Elira, I didn't." I stepped back. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "But I've learned to live without you. That's something you should have taught me." Instead of abandoning me when I needed you most, I turned and walked away as she stood frozen, lost in a crowd of strangers who knew me not as a daughter, but as a CEO. That night, she sent me an email. Subject: "Just please read Elira. I know I've made mistakes. I should've never let Julian get between us. I thought I was helping you, protecting you. Maybe I was selfish. I'm in trouble now. I lost the house. I'm behind on rent. Your brother moved away. I have no one. If you ever find it in your heart, I'd like to talk. I'll be at the mansion gate next Saturday, where you once said goodbye to everything. If you come, I'll wait." I stared at the message for a long time. She would be at the gate, the very place she let me walk away from with nothing. My heart raced. My palms sweated, because what she didn't know was the mansion was mine now. I arrived 15 minutes early. I didn't know why I was nervous. Maybe because for years, I'd imagined this moment in so many different ways, where I yelled, where I cried, where I collapsed into her arms, or where I walked away without a word. But none of those fantasies truly captured how heavy this moment was. Because I wasn't just walking up to the mansion gates as her daughter, I was walking up as the woman she'd refused to believe I could become. The mansion was no longer Julian's. He'd sold it during quiet bankruptcy after a messy lawsuit. I had watched from the sidelines as his empire crumbled, never stepping in, never smiling, but never helping either. I bought the estate through a shell company, anonymously, renovated it, cleaned the filth of his legacy from its bones, planted lavender at the gates. I kept the same iron fencing, though it reminded me of the last time I stood here, bags in hand, dignity in ruins. And now I stood here again. But I wasn't waiting. She was. She arrived exactly on time. Her clothes were neat but worn. Her purse was fraying at the seams. The lines on her face seemed deeper. And her eyes, those once fierce, commanding eyes, looked hollow. She hesitated when she saw me, like she wasn't sure if I was real. Elira, she whispered, stepping forward. I nodded. She gave a nervous laugh. You look so different. I smiled politely. Success will do that. She flinched. There was an awkward silence. A bird flew over the gate, landing on a stone pillar. For a second, it felt like even nature was holding its breath. I'm proud of you, she said finally. I read about Rise Plus Remedy. You built something incredible. I built it because I had to, I replied calmly. When everyone turned their backs, I had no choice. Her lips pressed together. She looked down at the gravel. I thought I was helping you by pushing you toward stability. She said, Julian, he offered things I never could. And when you left with him, I assumed you were choosing that life over me. I wasn't choosing one over the other, I said. I wanted both. I wanted my mother and the man I loved. But when things fell apart, I needed you, and you let me bleed. She swallowed hard. I was angry, hurt. You ran off and stopped calling. I didn't know how to fix it. And when he started offering me help, I was desperate. I let the silence sit for a moment before I asked, why did you come today? She hesitated. I need help, Elira. I lost the apartment. My pension isn't enough to cover costs. I've applied for assistance, but it takes time. I'm not asking for the mansion. I'm not asking for a handout. Just help me survive. There. It was the request, the admission, not for forgiveness, not for love, for survival. I took a deep breath. I'm not going to let you starve, MOM, I said. I've arranged for a small apartment paid for a year in advance. There's a care package inside, groceries, clothes, some money for essentials. I've also included contact information for a therapist and a life counselor. She blinked. You did all that? Yes, I said. Because I am not you. I don't abandon people when they're down. Tears slipped down her face. So, you forgive me? I looked her in the eye, my voice steady. No, I said. But I'm letting go. That's different. She began to cry, quietly. Shoulders shaking, face crumbling. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Just peace. I'm not coming back, I continued. This place, it doesn't mean what it used to. I bought it because I needed to prove something to myself. But now I'm selling it. Someone else can live behind these gates. She stared at me, shocked. Why? Because I no longer need reminders of the pain, I said. I'm building something new, something beautiful, far away from here. She nodded slowly. I hope one day you'll let me be part of that. I gave a soft smile, one that didn't quite reach my eyes. Maybe, I said. But I'm not building my future on shaky foundations anymore. I need people who held me when I was weak, not those who watched me fall. I turned, walked toward the black town car parked nearby. She stood behind the gates, watching me go. It felt poetic. I didn't cry that night, not even a tear. I went home, poured a glass of white tea from my new winter blend, curled up under a weighted blanket, and watched the final documents for the mansion sale hit my inbox. I was free, not just from Julian, not just from her, but from the version of myself that thought love had to be earned. A week after I left the mansion behind, I walked into a new office space in the heart of the city. Fresh paint, floor-to-ceiling windows, the hum of a dozen passionate women working on something bigger than themselves. Rise Plus Remedy had outgrown the storage room in my apartment, and even the rented warehouse that came after. Now we had headquarters, real ones, with a wellness bar, an in-house media team, and a community corner filled with books, cushions, and tea for anyone who needed peace. I looked around and realized I didn't just build a brand. I built a sanctuary. Not just for me, but for every woman who was ever made to feel small, or invisible, or replaceable. Morning, Elira, my assistant chirped. Investor call at 10. Design team wants to show you the new packaging prototypes. And a woman named Naomi left a voicemail, says she knew you from school and wants to partner on a trauma recovery workshop. I smiled. Tell the design team I'll be there. And forward Naomi's details. I want to hear what she's building. The call at 10 was with an angel investor in Los Angeles who wanted to license Rise Plus Remedies formulas into luxury spas. By 10:25, I'd negotiated a $1.8 million seed round and capped full equity. By noon, I was hosting a live Q&A on social media, answering questions from women all over the world. How do you bounce back from losing everything? Someone asked. I paused, looked into the lens. You don't bounce, I said. You rebuild, brick by brick. And the new version of you. She's stronger, smarter, softer where it counts and steel where it matters. But not everything was forward motion. One night, after everyone had left the office, I sat alone by the window, staring out at the city lights. My phone buzzed. It was my mom. I stared at the screen. She hadn't called since the mansion. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again, this time a text. I saw your interview. You looked beautiful. I mean that. Then another. I'm working part-time at the community center, helping with their women's program. You inspired me. And finally, I don't expect anything. Just, I'm proud of you. I locked the screen and pressed the phone to my chest. Forgiveness is strange. It's not an event. It's not even a choice you make once. It's a slow unraveling, a softening, a crack in the armor that lets just enough light in to remember love, even the kind that failed you. I didn't reply that night, but I saved the message. A few months later, I spoke at a women's leadership conference. The theme was becoming the hero you needed. I told the story, not the whole thing, but enough. I told them how I married a man who wanted to own me, how I lost my family, how I slept on a mattress on the floor and built an empire in the dark. I told them how healing isn't a straight line and how success doesn't erase pain, but it redefines your relationship with it. Afterward, a young woman with tear-streaked cheeks hugged me and whispered, "You just told my story." That moment, that was everything. Julian tried to contact me again once. An email. "Hey stranger, I heard about your company. Impressive. You always had more fire than I gave you credit for. Maybe we should grab coffee and catch up. Strictly friendly. No hard feelings." G laughed out loud. Then I replied, simply, "I don't drink coffee with ghosts. Wishing you peace." Blocked. Deleted. Done. One sunny afternoon, I visited the apartment where I'd placed my mom. She wasn't home, but I saw a note taped to her door. "Gone to volunteer at the shelter back by 3. It made me smile. When she came home later, she found a fresh basket outside her door. Lavender, chamomile, a handwritten note. "Thank you for choosing change. You didn't have to. But I see you. Love, Elira." No signature. No expectations. Just a start. I didn't build Rise Plus Remedy for revenge. But it became the most beautiful revenge of all, because I rose. I recovered. And I helped others do the same. They say healing looks like walking away. Sometimes It also looks like walking back with your head held high, your boundaries intact, and a love for yourself that no one can ever take again. People always ask me if I ever regret it. Walking away from Julian, from my mother, from a life that looked beautiful on the outside but was rotting at the core. They ask if it was worth it choosing myself, even when it meant starting over from rock bottom, and every time I smile and say the same thing. The best thing I ever did was lose everything that wasn't really mine. A year passed since the day I walked away from the mansion. In that time, Rise Plus Remedy tripled in size. We expanded to 4 countries. We opened a flagship wellness CAF in Chicago. Our tea blends were featured in Vogue, and I was named one of Forbes 30 under 30 in health and wellness. But the milestones that mattered most weren't the ones with headlines. It was the emails from women who said our teas helped them through grief. The single mother who said our sleep blend helped her rest for the first time in a year. The college student who shared that our weekly podcast gave her the courage to leave a toxic relationship. The 62-year-old woman who messaged, "I thought it was too late for me. Then I found your story. Now I'm starting again." That's what made it worth it. Not the money, not the recognition, the impact. The quiet, beautiful revenge of thriving. One afternoon, as I finished a keynote event in New York, I was approached by someone I hadn't seen in over 5 years. Rita, Julian's sister. She looked different, softer, tired maybe, but not cruel. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember me," she said with a careful smile. "I do," I said. "You wore red to my wedding." "Said it was your mourning color," she winced. "I was a brat. I'm sorry. I thought you were just another pretty girl my brother was stringing along." "I was," I said. "Just one who happened to outlast him." She laughed, surprisingly warmly. "He's in Dubai now, married a socialite. She took him to court over a prenup and actually won. He's quieter these days. I hope he's healing," I replied. She looked surprised. "You do?" "Yes," I said. "Because healed people don't hurt others. If he gets better, fewer people bleed." She nodded. "You've changed." "No," I said softly. "I just came home to myself." Later that week, I was invited to a local awards event for female entrepreneurs. When they called my name, I walked to the podium in a black velvet dress, confident, calm, complete. I looked out at the audience and spotted someone near the back. My mother. She didn't wave, didn't try to draw attention. She just sat still, eyes shining, hands clasped in her lap, and somehow that quiet presence meant more than 1,000 apologies. After the ceremony, I approached her. She stood up hesitantly. "Congratulations," she said. "Thank you. You look..." She paused, eyes full of memory. "You look like the woman I always hoped you'd be." I looked at her, really looked at her. The mother who raised me, hurt me, failed me, and now, in her own flawed way, was trying to make it right. "I'm still becoming her," I said. "But I'm close." We didn't say anything else. We didn't have to. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt with wood and nails. Sometimes presence is enough. Weeks later, I got a letter from Julian, handwritten. No return address. "Elira, I watched your TED talk. I didn't know you had that in you. Maybe I never bothered to look. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. You deserved someone who saw you. I didn't. That's on me. Good luck, always." G read it once. Then I lit a match and watched the past turn to ash. Closure doesn't always come in the form of forgiveness. Sometimes, it's just finally being unmoved. It's strange, isn't it? The very people who tried to define you end up becoming footnotes in your story. The ones who told you you'd never make it. They get front row seats to your glow up. And the girl with no one left and nothing to her name becomes the woman who saves herself and others. That's the part they don't teach you. That rock bottom is where the strongest foundations are built. I never remarried, not yet. I dated, yes. I loved even. But I stopped searching for someone to fill the void. I filled it myself. Now anyone who joins my life is a bonus, not a fix. And my mother, she's changing. Slowly. She calls once a week. Sends me articles. She even learned how to brew my teas properly and claims she corrects people at her local co-op when they get the steep time wrong. Progress? It's not perfect, but it's something. One night, years later, I stood on the balcony of my new home far from the old mansion, with ocean wind in my hair and peace in my bones. I held a cup of resurrect in my hand, and I whispered to the wind, "Thank you, Julian. Thank you, MOM. Thank you for leaving me, because you helped me find myself." I didn't plan on going back to that house, ever. But curiosity is a wicked whisperer. I wanted to see it once more, not as the girl they broke, but as the woman they'd never recognized. It looked smaller now, shrinking under the weight of years and regrets. The fresh white paint couldn't mask the poison soaked into its walls. I walked past the front gate during a business trip and saw that the family estate sign was still there, rusty, bent, like it didn't belong anymore. That night, I returned to my hotel and made a choice I never thought I would. I dialed Aunt Ramona's number. Enya. Her voice cracked like a prayer that had waited too long. "Yes," I whispered. Silence. Then she sobbed. We met the next morning. She looked older, more frail, eyes sunken with guilt. But when she saw me, her entire body trembled like a soul, asking for mercy. She hugged me tighter than anyone ever had. "I wanted to take you," she said. "They wouldn't let me. They said you'd ruin everything." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened. Because now I had power. I wasn't a child begging for rescue. I was a woman deciding who deserved forgiveness. "I want to know everything," I said calmly, and she told me. The truth spilled out in pieces. The family empire had started failing a few years after I left. Harold's shady dealings came back to bite him. Felicia's social circle had abandoned her after a scandal involving her misusing charity funds that were originally part of a trust fund under my name. They sold off property to stay afloat. But when that wasn't enough, they started draining resources from one final asset, my father's old agricultural supply business, long thought to be defunct. What they didn't know, I'd already bought it back under a shell company name and turned it into a booming ethical trade enterprise. Now they were surviving off my success, completely unaware, and I planned to let them fall with their mouths full of stolen honey. When I told Ramona, she looked stunned. You own Darrow Harvest COC. I rebranded it as Green Enya Global, and they've been using our lines for 2 years now. The entire supply chain runs through me." Her hands flew to her mouth. "My God," I smiled. "I don't need revenge, Auntie. I already own their lives. They just haven't read the fine print." She leaned back, shocked. Then slowly, she smiled too. That day, I offered her a position on my advisory board. She had decades of industry experience, and I trusted her despite everything. People can rot, but sometimes they can heal 2.it wasn't long before Felicia and Harold discovered the truth. A letter arrived at their doorstep. A cease and desist order, signed by me. That night, they tried calling, messaging, emailing. I didn't answer. Instead, I posted a press release. Green Enya Global severs ties with previous suppliers due to ethical concerns, and just like that, their final lifeline was severed. They called it financial sabotage. I called it justice. The media ran the story, disgraced. Socialite couple lose final assets after supply fallout with rising ethical empire. Karma had a new face, and it looked just like mine. But I didn't dance on their ashes. I didn't go on interviews or post smug tweets. Because my revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about reclaiming myself, and I was far from done. When the news broke, my inbox flooded with messages from journalists, old acquaintances, college classmates, even strangers who claimed we had once shared a locker or a bus stop. Everyone wanted a quote, a comment, a soundbite from the girl who brought down the Darrows. But I didn't say a word. Let them speculate. Let them write my silence into whatever headline they liked. The real story wasn't for the papers. It was for me, but that didn't stop my past from knocking on my door. It was Felicia who showed up first. At my office. Yes, my office. Security had called me on the intercom, telling me there was a distressed woman in designer heels refusing to leave unless she spoke to the CEO personally. I told them to let her wait for 2 hours. Then I stepped into the lobby. She was sitting on one of our velvet benches, clutching her overpriced handbag like it could protect her. Her face looked pale, drained. The bags under her eyes were painted over poorly with makeup that hadn't seen daylight in years. When she saw me, her mouth opened, maybe to plead, maybe to blame, maybe to fake motherly sorrow. But I held up my hand before she could speak. I gave you everything once. You took it and buried it. Enya, please. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You chose power. You chose greed. And you made me believe I was unworthy of love. Tears welled in her eyes. I lost everything, she whispered. Please, just help us restart. Harold is sick. We have nothing left. I stared at her, stone still. I was sick too, remember? As a child. But no one nursed me back. No one begged for me. She reached for my hand. You're better than this. Please be the bigger person. I am. That's why you're not being escorted out. She froze. I leaned in and said softly, leave before I revoke the mercy you didn't deserve. She left, tears streaking her face. The same face that once told me I'd never amount to anything unless I obeyed. That night, I walked home alone. I should felt powerful, victorious. But all I felt was empty, not because I pitied her, but because the child in me had been waiting for that apology, and it never came. Harold, on the other hand, had no interest in groveling. He went on a podcast 2 weeks later, claiming his business had been targeted by feminist radicals and family-hating opportunists. The hosts tried to spin it as a redemption arc. Poor rich man. Misunderstood. Victim of cancel culture. But the internet wasn't having it. A thread popped up on social media, detailing all of his past abuses, records, testimonies, old charity reports. And when one brave ex-employee came forward with proof of his verbal and emotional abuse in the workplace, it went viral. They weren't just broken financially now. They were pariahs. No one would touch them with a 10-foot pole in any industry. Their names had become cautionary tales, and I was offered book deals, talk shows, inspirational interviews, but again I declined because I didn't want to be a brand. I wanted to be free. I booked a one-way ticket to the coast and stayed in a small town for a month. No Wi-Fi, no headlines, just ocean and air and silence. It was there in that quiet that I finally let myself grieve. I cried for the girl I used to be, for the birthdays forgotten, the bruises covered, the dreams deferred, and when the tears stopped, I felt lighter, not healed, but no longer hollow. I returned to the city with a new goal. I wanted to give what I never had. When I came back to the city, it wasn't with vengeance in my heart anymore. It was with vision. I didn't just want to destroy the Darrow's empire, I had already done that. I wanted to build something in its place, something stronger, something that would reach the kind of girls I used to be. The ones who sat quietly at dinner tables, afraid to speak. The ones who were told their pain was imaginary, that their dreams were silly, that their worth depended on obedience. I opened a scholarship fund for girls aging out of foster care. I funded mental health initiatives in schools across the state. I created a mentorship program connecting survivors of domestic abuse with women in leadership roles. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant for headlines. It was meant for healing, and the irony, that's what made the media love it. Suddenly, the mysterious businesswoman who toppled the Darrow dynasty became a symbol of resilience. Think pieces, profile essays, even college lectures used my journey as a case study in strategic disruption and social entrepreneurship. I smiled at the attention, but I didn't live for it. I lived for the letters, the anonymous notes I started receiving from women who said things like, "I left my abusive fiancé because of you. I applied for college because of your story. I never thought anyone would believe me until I read about what you did." Those were the real trophies. And then one day, while reviewing grant applications in my office, I saw a familiar name on a sum. Sarah Darrow. My heart stopped. Sarah, the cousin who laughed when her mother slapped me across the face at dinner. The girl who once told me to stay in the attic if I wanted to cry like a freak. The girl who mirrored Felicia's cruelty like it was sport. She was applying for a clerical position through a third-party vendor. Clearly, she hadn't realized who now owned the parent company. I stared at her application. She had no references left. No one to vouch for her. She'd dropped out of college. Her family name, once a key to open every door, was now a locked vault. And still, something in her some felt different. There was a cover letter. In it, she wrote, "I know my name probably turns your stomach. I don't blame you. If this application finds its way to someone who remembers who I was, I want to say, I'm not proud of the girl I used to be. I was raised in cruelty and passed it down like a reflex. But I've been humbled, and I'm trying to start over. Even if you say no, I understand. But if you say yes, I promise to earn it." I sat with that letter for a long time. I thought about how, at every turn, I had begged anyone for a chance to be seen for who I could become, not just what I had survived. Could I do the same for her? Eventually, I sent it to HR with one note: interview her thoroughly and fairly. No one knew I made the call. 2 weeks later, she was hired. I didn't speak to her, not at first, but one day in the hallway, our eyes met. She froze. I nodded. Just slightly. She whispered, "Thank you." And I walked on. Not for forgiveness, but because some cycles end not with revenge, but with restraint, and that was the moment I knew I had already won. Months passed. the world moved on from the Darrow collapse. Media outlets shifted to newer scandals, newer dynasties. My name still floated in quiet corners of business panels and non-profit circles, but I had built a life of peace, something I never thought possible, until I received a letter, not an email, not a memo, a letter, handwritten in slanted, tight script. Like someone had rehearsed every word. It was from a woman named Elaine Patterson, that name. It sounded faintly familiar, like something from long ago. The letter read, "Dear Enya, you don't know me, but I knew your mother. I worked with her. I've waited years to write this, unsure if it was my place, but you deserve to know the truth. Everything you believe about how you ended up with the Darrows, it's not the full story. Your mother didn't abandon you. She didn't overdose by accident." She was silenced. My throat closed. I read the rest, hands trembling. Elaine said she was a nurse in the detox facility where my mother was recovering. According to her, my mother had been making progress. She was 2 weeks sober, talking about getting me back, about finding a lawyer to fight for custody. She had applied for a part-time job at a local diner and was attending therapy every morning. Then suddenly she died of an overdose, but Elaine said the timing never sat right. There were rumors among the night staff, unconfirmed whispers, that someone had visited her that day. Someone in a designer coat. A woman with cold eyes, Felicia Darrow. Elaine didn't know what happened in that room. But hours later, my mother was found unconscious, needle in arm. No autopsy was pursued. The case was closed. Just another junkie story. I dropped the letter. My vision blurred. All this time, I thought my mother had failed me, but she hadn't. She had tried. She was coming back for me. And Felicia had made sure she never did. The rage that I thought I had buried came back in waves. But this time, it wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was silent, heavy, final. I had been fighting for a kind of justice, but now I wanted the truth. All of it. I called Elaine. She was older now, retired, but still sharp. She confirmed everything in the letter. She even had a photogranny from a staff camera showing Felicia Darrow entering the rehab clinic that day, dressed in all white. I took that photo, that letter, and every documented timeline I had, and I sent it to a journalist. Not just any journalist, the one who had first written about me. She was relentless, smart, fair. She had been waiting for the final piece of the story. When the expose dropped, it was explosive. Aries empire tied to suspicious death of young mother. New evidence suggests cover-up. Even in death, Felicia's name became infamous. A posthumous investigation was launched. Her estate was frozen. Several former board members resigned. And while no charges could ever be filed, the world finally saw the Darrows for who they were. Not royalty, not victims, but calculated, generational tyrants who built their empire on silence, manipulation, and destruction. And my mother, her story was told, not as a footnote, but as a mother who tried to fight back. I had cleared her name. For the first time, I visited her grave. No cameras, no press, just me, kneeling in the dirt, whispering words I had waited my whole life to say. I'm sorry I believed them. I know now. You didn't give up on me. The wind carried my words into the trees, and I felt it then, a release, like her spirit, after all this time, could finally rest. The years that followed were quieter, not empty, just calmer. After the expose, my name trended again, but this time with words like justice, resilience, and redemption. It wasn't about wealth anymore, or revenge, or spectacle. It was about truth, about reclaiming what was stolen, and building something no one could destroy. I never returned to the public spotlight. No interviews, no panels. I left all of that behind. I turned the Darrow estate, yes, the one I inherited after Felicia's death, into a rehabilitation and legal aid center for single mothers, domestic abuse survivors, and children in the foster system. The irony? That mansion, once a place of manipulation and control, now housed women healing from the very systems the Darrows used to dominate. Every hallway became a tribute. Each room had a name, a mother, a daughter, a story. My mother's was the very first. The media called it the house that healed, but to me, it was simply home. I also became a silent partner in multiple startups led by women of color, formerly incarcerated individuals, and social reformers. I didn't want credit, just change. Some nights, I'd walk through the gardens Felicia once used for galas and photo ops, barefoot, silent. No crowds, no lies, just peace. And in those moments, I didn't think about the pain anymore. I thought about the girl I used to be. The little Enya who was told she was lucky to be rescued. The girl who was groomed to sit still, smile politely, and never ask questions. She was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by betrayal, grief, and fire, but who chose to rebuild, not rot. And then I got a message. A girl named Mina, just 17, sent me a letter through the center. She wrote, "They told me I'd never make it without them, that I was nothing. But I saw your story, and now I think I might be something too." I cried. I wrote back, "Dear Mina, I was once like you, alone, scared, lied to by the people who should have protected me. But you have a power no one can steal, not your past, not your pain, not the people who underestimated you. They may have tried to erase your story, but now you get to write it, page by page, on your terms. And when you're ready, I'll be here. Always, Enya, because that's the legacy I wanted. Not wealth, not revenge, not applause, but a world where broken girls didn't stay broken, where the voiceless spoke loudly, and where monsters like the Darrows never won again. So if you're listening to this story, wondering if healing is possible after devastation, it is. If you're wondering if silence can ever speak louder than screams, it can. And if you've been told your pain doesn't matter, let this be your proof. It does, and so do you. Always. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment revenge. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? What do you want to hear from us in next video? If you have any incident in your life, please let us know. We would love to share your story.